Right now, our curriculum
Mm.
brings out cookie cutter models of designers and architects. We all can cry horse कि ये नहीं हो रहा है, वो नहीं हो रहा है, architects को
No,
we are not getting
right.
the due, our engineers are taking our projects away. It's not going to change. And I think collaboration is important from that perspective also.
Do you think it is possible for architecture colleges to provide placements? And
So I think it's a very complex problem. I am a
Hmm.
small firm, say, sitting in Hyderabad. How do I access a candidate who is probably graduating from Delhi? Neither does that candidate know that I exist. And I am a small firm. I cannot go and have placements in that college in Delhi.
most of the architecture colleges are actually only in handful cities. If I only talk about these large cities,
One is maybe in these cities, the colleges need to collaborate, come together and have one placement. People may be willing to do it.
hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Insyd Converse. I am architect Saumya Bansal, co-founder of Insyd. And today I have Gita Balakrishnan with me. She is the founder of Ethos Foundation, Arcause, ACEDGE, and she has been a former president of IIA West Bengal chapter,
Chairperson of IIA.
chairperson. Yeah. Today we are going to talk to her about how can we increase industry and academia collaborations since she has a long career, more than 30 years, and she has been working actively on these issues. I'd like to discuss these things with her. But before I do that, I'd like Geeta to give a short introduction of herself.
Thanks, Saumya. You make me sound ancient. Yes, it's 30 plus years, 35 to be precise, when
I
I graduated from SPA Delhi. And I started with dabbling with working with an architect or two. And I found myself not very happy and chose to apply actually responded to an advertisement for a creative educationist in slums. And that's how my career with the social sector started. I said, even if it means moving away from architecture, I wanted to do something that I felt good doing. And incidentally, when I called Anita Reddy of Avas, who was the one who put out the ad, they needed an architect. And I joined as a shelter coordinator. And I worked
Hmm.
for close to 10 long years with Avas in different capacities. And I'm now a trustee of Avas. Somewhere along the
So,
way, I also continue to do some freelance work. I equip myself with stabilized mud blocks, knowledge on stabilized mud blocks, and alternate methods of construction. So there were some projects that I did on a freelance basis. It was in 2001 that Ethos was born, and most people know of me from that time, really. Then
yes,
I moved to
yes.
Kolkata, and in 2002 was the first quiz on architecture that I ran under the banner of Ethos. The quiz was called Acumen, and that's 22 years now. So it was about 22 years of working with learning and teaching outside the classroom, working with building relationships with colleges, with students that went on. And somewhere along the way, wherever there was a gap, that's something that one chose to address. And that's how these different initiatives that you mentioned, whether it was ACEDGE, which is our online learning portal, or now Ethos Foundation that I'm spearheading, and Arcause, which is for social, came about. And I'm not sure how many of you know that I have moved on from the original Ethos avatar, which used to work with
Hmm.
events. I found able hands to a very good team that I've handed it over to. And I'm focusing on ACEDGE and Ethos Foundation now. That's me.
Great. So when you started, the world was really different back then, right? There was no internet. Things were not that accessible like they are now. So what differences have you seen, whatever these gaps you have mentioned? How would you compare it with the gaps that you find today?
So I think, firstly, I think the number of colleges, number of institutions, number of
Hmm.
students has also increased greatly. The accessibility to information, the willingness of students and young architects to experiment has changed. They're willing to experiment with a lot of things now. So you were always considered a rebel if you were doing something very different earlier. Today
Hmm.
you're considered, oh,
Yes.
fantastic, this person is trying something so different. And you, oh, they're run of the mill doing the same thing. So that's another change that has happened. Someone who's doggedly following something is considered boring, while
Hmm.
someone who's constantly changing. So these things have definitely changed way people work, how firms function, how, for instance, I think there's a lot more attrition now. People leave jobs like that because they're willing to
Mm.
experiment something new. They're not. So those are also changes that one is grappling with.
You
Yeah,
have seen,
as you
yes.
go along. I'm
Huh.
not saying
Huh.
personally because I didn't have too many people working for me earlier. But I'm saying my learnings
Huh.
from firms, from
Hmm.
students, I think the scale of work, the quantum of
Hmm.
work has also gone up substantially. You're talking about volumes of architectural work, so much more now, right? You're talking about the scale.
Hmm.
Even building
Huh.
earlier would be more low
Huh.
rise.
Acha.
Now there's so much more, so much larger quantum
Huh.
of work. But at the same time, things that
Hmm.
haven't changed, um, power. In this case, by power recognition, jobs, it's still
I
vested
understand,
in
yes.
only a certain handful of architects, while
Hmm.
others who are struggling, doing things in a small way, are continuing to struggle and do things in that small way. There is an acceptance that I already mentioned for different roles, but the curriculum has
Hmm.
not changed to align with that. And I think it will happen.
Hmm.
There is
Yeah.
conversation that's happening around this. And I think it's good to, it should not be that you do 5 years of architecture where you're learning how to design a building. And then you're saying, okay,
Hmm.
now after this, you can pursue a
Do
career
whatever you want to. Yeah.
on aspects. How can you decide a little earlier? Learn to design that building because you need to write about it, you need to photograph it, you need to project manage it, you need to draw it or whatever. But you're learning it from that perspective and not from the
Perspective.
perspective
Yeah.
of someone who's going to actually work on field and design that project. So, yes, there are huge changes that have
Hmm.
happened.
One thing I would like to still know from you, you mentioned that there was a knowledge gap when you started Ethos out, right? So, do you still find that there is a knowledge gap in
I wouldn't
students?
say there was a knowledge gap. I think even then, and what I was trying to say was what they needed to learn in college, they were probably being taught. But beyond that,
Huh.
what the world is, that gap was there. Today,
Hmm.
like I said, there's a difference between knowledge and information. Information is available on their fingertips, provided you know what to look for, provided you know what your search is,
Hmm.
and you spend. So
Hmm.
there is enough out there now. I don't think there is a gap or
Hmm.
a deficit in that manner.
So, what issues did you face when you were collaborating with colleges or you were trying to go and talk to their students?
So it is tricky ground, right? You are going to a college and almost like
Hmm.
saying that I'm here to also teach in a sense, right? I'm not teaching what you are
Yeah.
doing. I am still, in a
Right.
sense, teaching through a different method.
Huh. Hmm.
So it is tricky, but at the same time, you use the word collaborate. And I think that's the key.
Hmm.
When you start looking at it as a collaboration and not a competition, and the colleges, the faculty, the
Hmm.
principals, the management perceive you as a partner and not as a competition. That yeah, I
Competitor.
think that's the
Yeah.
key, and that's what helped me strengthen ethos to the way it is today. To have everybody as a friend, everybody as a well wisher, realizing that we are all, and I think that's key in what I'm doing through the foundation also. And that's why I think all of us need to be very open, sharing in order for us to be able to grow. I said this a little while ago that there is space for so many. There are so many who got into the space that I am in, asked for quotes from me or asked me to come on juries of competitions that they were organizing. And you go because you need more like this. And then you innovate because, yeah, you might say, okay, there are so many competitions now, nobody's going to come in for this. Or, like I said, so many learning portals now. Um,
Hmm.
Today, I think the challenge we face is a little different. Challenges of the surfeit of everything. You talk of competitions, there are so many competitions. You talk of
Yeah.
opportunities, there seem to be so many opportunities. So, what is it that, and at the same time, I think there still exists gaps. And since there is so much of, I wouldn't call it noise, music happening all around, which channel to tune into is something that students and youngsters often find difficult to pick. And that is something as a challenge I think all of us are facing. And I think that's where we all need to collaborate together as well. It's also from the perspective of the situation we are in as a community of architects, honestly, Saumya, seriously. I think we are in a bad position. This is something I have,
There's a lot of
no, I
ego
have
that I have
increasingly
seen.
felt ego is, yeah, those are things as architects, it goes along with, yeah,
We
along with
develop
architecture.
somehow.
But what I'm trying to say is, I think if we don't rally together, we're not going to see the changes that we want. We all can cry horse कि ये नहीं हो रहा है, वो नहीं हो रहा है, architects को, we are not getting the due, our engineers are taking our projects away. It's not going to change. And I think collaboration is important from that perspective also. It's something that to solve every problem. If you're talking today, I was talking at Watson School of Architecture in the morning on universal design. I'm not an expert. There were experts from IIT Kharagpur who had come in, who were doing the whole session, and I was giving the intro on empathy because it's one of our pillars after my walk, where we identified universal design is the answer, Udita is the pillar. And we're talking about the situation we are in. We're talking about buildings not conforming mostly. We are talking about public spaces, public buildings not conforming. We're talking about public spaces not conforming, our vehicles not conforming. If we all do not start doing things together, you can't expect the government to enforce. You can't expect any outsider to enforce. You can't expect clients to agree to what is required, right? Clients to agree that it is important to comply. Because they'll say, XYZ didn't do it. Why do we need to do it? I think it's so important for all of us to speak in unison on some of these
But
things.
but isn't it the same reason? If he is not doing it, why should I do? If isn't it the reason people don't come forward
True. And that's what it's
for
true.
activities like
True.
this? How do we bring them? What is their incentive? What is their short-term incentive, I would say,
Yeah.
to
So I
bring them
think that
together?
depends on how excitingly you design an event and how do you make it a thing that they want to be seen as is something that's something that needs detailing of the initiative itself when you're talking short term. But I think long, and also the partnerships you build, you're doing it by yourself, it's one thing. When you start doing it with partners, I think then again, the involvement of people is a lot more. So again, partnerships you build. And in the long term, I think when you start addressing, I think the goodwill that Connect brought for us, at least for Ethos, it was not about making it a business. It was never about that. Even there were so many times
And
that's
it's still
still not,
not for the new
it's
initiatives
not
for
because I've passed that age also now to see if I need to make it a business. It was about filling in these gaps. Then I was very clear that I will not lose money. I will make money to spend money. I will not take
yeah.
money out of it if I don't have to. But whatever money I make will be spent to make it larger. So if I needed a website, it had to come out from the organization. If I needed to hire somebody, it had to come out. Initial years, I put out of my pocket because we weren't able to afford. So it was a tough balancing act on any of this. If I had to pay someone a salary every month, it didn't matter that I didn't get paid. And that's something that was important to me. We started talking about collaborating. And I think, yeah, I think
Yes.
that's the key to a better tomorrow for as architects. Otherwise, you talk about undercutting of fees. This is not a space I am in, but there are people who have been. But when the time comes, you probably do it yourself. Then where is the
And
sanctity? Okay. Yeah.
well,
And you say the same
yes.
thing. If that person can do it, why can I not?
Why
It's
can't
my
I? Yeah.
prerogative to do it. So how do you start rallying together? And it's very hard because there will be a bunch of them who will not comply.
Some people will not sign up for it. Even if they sign up, there will
Some
be
people who
drop-offs.
don't need to. They are doing so well in life that they say, I don't need any
So
of you.
well,
I'm forging ahead on my way.
I didn't even count them.
Right.
Okay, so I'll focus only on industry and academia. I would like to talk about that one point where a graduate enters the industry. That point, what kind of collaborations would you want to see more often happening between colleges and industry?
So I think it needs to start much earlier than the third year, than even the fourth year and fifth year. It has started much earlier, maybe right from the first year. I think
Okay.
colleges and students need to understand expectations of the industry. And there are many practices, especially the alumni, could be your place to go to really. Right? You have the alumni
Hmm.
in many.
But most colleges don't even have these alumni
Uh,
groups.
it's time they started building it then very clearly, right? Because how do
Yes.
you otherwise, you can't go to the big architects always. And who will
Hmm.
understand the
Yes.
pain points of the students better than their own alumni? They know the college, they know the
Hmm.
problems,
That's
right?
so true.
They
Yeah.
know how they struggled and suffered. They know the gaps that were there. They know how they've got to where
Hmm.
they have reached. And that's
Hmm.
something, in fact, I'm working on now, that building
Hmm.
alumni networks across colleges, bringing them together, is something that I believe is one way of uh, um, solving this as well. And I think you usually get down to making that portfolio be 15 days before you're applying and you're still struggling, running around, don't know what to put in. So I think that's what I meant by from the first year. You start
Hmm.
building, and it can always keep shifting. It's not a straight line. You'll go here, come back, then
Hmm.
you'll say, okay, let me go here. And then you'll say, okay, let me take this turn. So it is going to be like that. But it is exploratory. And what you're searching, you don't know what you're searching for. It's a search. Otherwise, till
Hmm.
the fifth year, you don't even know it's a search. You believe you're going to come out with the knowledge that is required for the industry, which when
And
it's
it's
not true.
not
And
true.
when you talk to faculty, I understand their point of view as well, because
Okay.
they have they have the syllabus to adhere to, right? They have this
Yes.
whole curriculum that has to
Uh,
be followed. There are directives. There are these guidelines. You go to any college today, they have these NAC inspections, they have the COA inspections, they have other guidelines and things that they have to adhere to. So they are already in a structure that is very hard to break out of. There are a few colleges that are trying to innovate within that structure, but there is the structure that they
hmm.
have to stick within. Now, how
Hmm.
do practical aspects? You have one professional practice course, but how do you build
Yeah.
it
Last
in?
semester.
So we've been talking about,
Hmm.
even recently, we are doing a project where we're giving grants to colleges and individuals to
Oh.
execute a
Okay.
small project. And that could be your learning tool, that you're actually, it can be a small rainwater harvesting project that you're doing, but you learn design, you learn calculations for rainwater harvesting, you learn how water, the nature of water, how it flows, how much, and what your rainfall pattern is. You learn that. Teachers learn to teach by doing that one small exercise. So I think there are various ways in which you can innovate within that structure. But again, it means funds, which not all
Hmm.
colleges have access to. So they have their limitations and problems. It's easy for us to sit outside and say they're not doing it. And at the same
Yes.
time, I
Yes.
think firms have their expectations. They don't want to take on someone. And so the first years are having a raw deal because everybody
Hmm.
wants someone who's already there. So there needs to be
Hmm.
that gap. That's an important gap to be bridged. People call it finishing school. People call it different things. But I think also, and that's another experiment I'm looking to conduct. I've written out a concept paper for it. I'm finding ways in which to fund it. But if you were to, again, each one's need is different, right? All
Hmm.
30, 40 students who come out from a college can't go through the same finishing program because they're not going to join in the same firm in the same capacity or
Right.
in the same stream as well. I might be interested in, or the firm that I'm looking at may want me to be on site. Somebody else may want me to be doing
Hmm.
detailing. Somebody else may appreciate the gift of my gab and want me to be presenting or making client presentations, helping with the image of the firm. There's so many things that can do. So it's not as if it's a one size fits all where I say, okay, you come out, you're put through this. So that becomes another college then, right? You're putting them through another machine and you're
Hmm.
expecting all of them to
Yeah.
come out refined. So you really need to have a tool where you're gauging what each of those 40 people need differently and mentoring them. And I think that, again, maybe that's where the alumni can play a role if the college so
Hmm.
believes. it can become part of their learning where there are 40 kids, those 40 say, okay, five of them want to do this, two of them want to do this, seven of them want to do this, or five of them lack skills in this, two of them lack skills in this, seven of them lack skills in this.
Hmm.
And then you find from your alumni who are those that can help bridge that gap.
Provide
And
those
then tell
skills.
them,
Yes.
can
Yeah.
you take them on as the alumni is investing time. So there will be, it will not be
Hmm.
there will be no financial transaction in this, but this kid will go and spend
Hmm.
time to learn those skills in whatever structure that's possible. I'm just throwing an idea. There are various ways in which this can be met. It's not so simple a
Hmm.
problem to solve and say these kids who are coming out can be prepared for it.
Hmm.
And our industry is not like the corporate sector where they need
Yeah.
these large volume of people and they're hiring them once in every year. They're putting them through
Hmm.
a orientation program as they come in, and they're all given the same kind of orientation because they're all going out there and trying to sell products or make products
Hmm.
or whatever it is. It's a similar kind of a role that many of them are going. Here it is so much more. Every firm is different from the other. I would say every corporate is also different from the other, but it's a very different scenario here. Right?
Yeah, it's a play of volumes there. We don't have so many students. We don't have so
Here
many
it's
firms.
a
And our firms are really
play of
very
scale.
small.
That's what I was going to say. Here it's more like a play of scale, right?
Yeah.
There are these large firms
Yeah.
who wouldn't really, you would also be one of the many if you're there. And then there are these small
Hmm.
firms where you're expected to step up and bear, bear the load. Otherwise,
Hmm.
you're not you're branded as you're not ready for the job. So it is extremely difficult,
Hmm.
a problem to solve. Really, it's not something. I mean, we've been
Hmm.
talking about it not today. We've been talking about it for a while, right? It's been
Yeah.
a issue that needs to be resolved. There are some ideas I think that need to be experimented. Like I said, there's space for so many. Each one should try and see
Hmm.
what works, scale it up, see how we can come together. Yeah. And equipping
Hmm.
faculty also to handle this. So we have faculty development programs galore on history, on teaching about various subjects, but preparing students for employment readiness is an art in itself. So maybe some faculty
Hmm.
development programs on that as well would help.
And actually, there is another school of thought which says ki education is only, it should only be concerned with education, right? So it's the fundamentals that a college should provide. And because industry is always 10 years ahead of
What is
colleges,
education? Where do you stop?
education is
Education should, yeah.
ready to stop. That's also.
Education is all through your life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a part of that school of thought. No? ठीक है 5 साल हमने ये पढ़ा दिया इसके बाद में you are ready to pick more
So you
things
need
up.
to teach them the skill to pick up. That's what needs to be taught, of course. So it's not
Hmm.
knowledge, not information. It's also the skill to be able to, yeah, pick
Pick up.
up, to be able
Huh.
to fit in, to be able to be part of a team, to be able to speak. Those are the skills that need to be taught. And how do they get integrated into?
Hmm.
I understand that there is this whole framework. How do they get integrated? You don't need to have a don't need to have a course on public speaking, on presentation making. You don't need to have a skill on team building. How did it happen within the framework of what you're doing? How do you build
Hmm.
that team?
But I would argue that these are very good courses to have.
They
Like
are. But I'm
literally.
saying, can it be integrated into your urban design program where you're anyway on the fourth year working in groups? Can it be
Hmm.
integrated? You're anyway doing that. So can it be a module as part of that? Then how that
Yeah.
team, starting from there, what is a good team?
Hmm.
How do you become a team player? How do you become a team leader? And
Hmm.
how do you ensure that the team that you have has all the skills that you need for delivering on that project? It's not just we're
Hmm.
good friends and hence we come together, which is how it typically probably happens also, right? So how do you play around with those tools that colleges already have to inculcate some of these things, right? How
Hmm.
do you stop that one person from speaking as the voice of the team every time? How do you make others also involved? Again, everybody
Yes,
doesn't need to
yes.
be good at public speaking. You want and give them that that benefit that I'm not so good at it. I don't want to do it, but what else can I do? What has been my role and
Hmm.
contribution to that presentation or to that product that has been generated? So I
Hmm.
think there are various ways. Then you start recognizing that I am good at this and I enjoy this. I'm never going to be able to break out of this and do something else. And these are the things that I'm
Hmm.
good at, and this is what I will apply for when I'm even in
Hmm.
my interviews. Those are the kind of firms that I'll apply for that need my skills. And one is
Hmm.
designing skills, detailing skills, those kind of skills, but also people skills, soft skills is also what we're talking about just now. Yeah.
So, what kind of changes have you seen with the colleges or with the students that you have been working with, given all the efforts that Ethos has been doing so far?
So I think one is I find that their ability to network outside their college also, keep in touch with people who they've met because of at an ethos event or any other event, but they keep in touch pretty much
Hmm.
for life. So there are people from a college in Tamil Nadu in touch with someone in Himachal, and so the exchange, that's one good thing that's really happening. I think the way they are, and hence they form teams like that also when they're working. I know
Hmm.
people from Delhi, one person from Delhi and one person from Bangalore who are running a firm in Hyderabad now. This is where I am. So
Hmm.
those are things that are happening rather well. They are, in terms of other things that have happened, yes, when we started off this whole resistance to technology, computers,
Hmm.
seekhna hai, 3D Max, all these things were fears. But now I think this generation is ahead. So they're born with some of these
Hmm.
skills with technology, and they're able to
Yeah.
learn and pick them up far easier than the past. So that's also some. I'm sure there's going to be some, like AI is something probably they'll grapple with now, and the next generation will find it absolutely. They're very comfortable with AI,
Hmm.
and that becomes their space. So I think there's always going to be that difference between the earlier set of students and the current set of students. And I think if you ask me what has changed with because of what we've done, so suppose, for instance, in our competitions, many of them in the past that I was a part of, they had to come and present on stage in front of, say,
Hmm.
300 people in a span of 10 minutes. Um, Today, of course, many people are doing the Shark Tank thing and they are presenting, but I'm talking about a time in 2005 where they had to come and do it. And I'm
Yeah.
meeting one of those young girls day after tomorrow in Hyderabad at Geeta, who was on stage in 2005. And how we have built that courage in them to be able to go and speak uh, with courage and be able to curtail and say your piece in 10 minutes, say what is important and not miss out on anything in those 10 minutes. That's how you make that elevator pitch when you have to
Hmm.
sell a product. So those are things, I think, skills that many of our, and also how to, there are many who did not win, were nowhere in the picture. But I think they took home a lot and they wrote back about what they learned by just participating. And the humility
Hmm.
in learning through an exercise like that, where you are learning from someone else who's won, you're learning from the brief. Then you're seeing,
Hmm.
okay, I did this case study. This is what the brief. And then you go and see the winning entries and say, this was the brief. This is how I designed it, but look at the approach of somebody else and how they have won and why they have won. And of course, there are people who come and
Hmm.
demand saying, how did that entry win over mine?
Yeah.
Have those conversations in a mature manner as well to be able to
Hmm.
accept eventually that this is why it happened. So I think the reason when you asked me, why will people come for an event or an initiative? It's also because
Hmm.
if they feel that they're growing with what they're being part of is why they will come. If they feel
Hmm.
that it is adding value to them is why they will come. And I think that's something that I don't mean you, anybody who's working in this space needs to
Yeah.
keep in sight when you're crafting your path on what is it that person
Hmm.
will take back. And this is something I keep telling my team as well. So you need to put yourself in their shoes always and yeah,
In their
and see
shoes.
what. And
Yeah.
that's happening increasingly to me after this walk. That I'm always thinking from the perspective of the receiver, saying, I'm saying this, but
Hmm.
are they hearing this? I'm saying it, but are they hearing the
Yeah.
same thing? So yes, there has been, I think we've done a lot. I think we've also built a universe of alumni of Ethos who are in different parts of the world, not just in India, who've taken part in different small things. Maybe some may not even have taken part, but have just attended, visited, who over a period of time have built their careers in different spaces, but are still in touch and are willing to give of their time, of their expertise. And we harness that expertise as well because they feel very strongly. I must tell you this little initiative that we call the Bridge Scholarship. We've been giving out need-based scholarships for the last 12 years to
Okay.
students in college who are in a financially difficult position. And it has nothing to do, it is eventually a, what do you call it, need come merit kind of a thing. It is based on how good they are as well. So I've
Mhm.
had the community of architects actually funding it. So architects are paying for it. And I write to various architects. It's about between 25 to 50,000 per student, depending on which college they're coming from, what their fee is, and so on. And we've been giving it out. This year we got 30 people to fund it. And feel very good that 30 scholarships were given out. We also have a
Wow.
MOU with each of these students that they will fund one scholarship when they become architects and they're earning money. And 2 years in a row, we've had our paid forward scholarship come through. We call it the paid forward scholarship. So they are paying it forward because someone took care of them. They're taking care of somebody. And we had our second paid forward scholarship this year, and the next one will be third. So this is also something that's happened through Ethos because they feel so strongly for what difference it made to their life. And when I said there are different
Yeah.
people, not just about the scholarship, there are people sitting in different parts of the world wanting and waiting to give of themselves because somewhere what we did touched their lives. And I think that's what we've achieved. I think it somewhere contributed to who they've become.
So nice. So this is for the audience I'm asking. How do they apply for this scholarship and where do they find these
So it's
details?
up on the Ethos Foundation website. Until last year, it used to be on Ethos Empowers website. It is a social initiative of sorts, so it's moved with the foundation. And it's around June we put out the call. June we
Okay.
put out the call. It's on our website. It's on Insta. They're following me. It'll be on my Insta handle, on Walk for Arcause Insta handle. And it's a very simple application. We don't expect, so even first years you can't expect first years to compete with fifth years in terms of work. So we ask
Hmm.
for only 2 A4 sheets, but we ask for a statement of purpose on why. There are some questions that help us understand the genuineness of the case. We also ask for two
Hmm.
references of people we can speak to, and we do actually speak to them. And you'll be surprised at the stories I've uncovered. I've uncovered stories about some of these people whose stories the college didn't know about how difficult times they are facing. And the college has gone back to again meeting them and trying to be with them. But of course, many colleges are aware. Many colleges are nominating them as well. That's also happened. But there have been cases where the colleges have said we need to be more aware and that we didn't know there was this issue. And there have been cases where the child is rather well to do, but in an
Hmm.
accident has lost both the parents and has money, but obviously no access to it right away. So we've said this year we will take care of
Hmm.
it. And then next year onwards, you don't need it because you probably are taken care of. Identifying these people. So the college themselves
Hmm.
nominates in some cases. In some cases, it's a student who sees. There's a small interview process. The 30 architects who supported it last year, they're invited for the interview. Not all of them want to be part of it. Some of them want it to be anonymous, the contributions. Some of them leave it to us to pick the candidate. But we send the information to the respective. Some wanted to be an alumni from their college that they'd like to pick. So it works in various ways that, and some actually spend time on the interviews, want to see the reports, want to see how the child is progressing. And they actually say, you asked for 25, but I think this child needs 40. Shirish Berry is one of them, architect Shirish Berry. He gave out 8 scholarships the last 2 years by himself.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful initiative.
Thanks. It started with NASA, actually. We did it as a partner with NASA the first 2 years and we gave it out at the NASA convention. But somewhere along the way, I think NASA committees change and then the continuity kind of becomes a problem. to retain.
Hmm.
And they come forward, it'll be something that we'd like to do again together. But right now it's been, and then 2 years it went with the NDTV Awards. In fact, it was called the Charles Korea Foundation Memorial Scholarship at that point in time for 2 years. And we
Hmm.
got a good fund then to give people at that point in time. They were giving a much larger amount than we were able to give at that point. So for 2 years, it was the Charles
Hmm.
Korea Memorial Scholarship, and then it's come back to becoming the Arcause Bridge Scholarships. Yeah.
Okay, so the second segment that I had in mind was about placements in architecture. I know we have discussed a little bit, but let's see if we can dive
Sure.
more into it. So I'll give you just a small background. Ki young graduates are often disenchanted with architecture given the hardships and low returns. Lack of college placements in architecture is also a huge problem, which creates a lot of drop-offs within the college years only. So there are so many drop-offs. Ki students find out कि अच्छा third year में पता लगा कि architecture में placements ही नहीं होते. And they had some financial problems, so they drop out. So do you think it is possible for architecture colleges to provide placements? And you have been keeping in touch with so many colleges now. What's the most common take of any college on this issue?
So I think it's a very complex problem. Again, it's a puzzle of sort that needs to be solved, and it needs many hands to solve again. So I think I'll start with why would, so there are 430 plus colleges,
30
30 plus
around?
colleges
Yeah.
today
Yeah.
in different parts of the country. I am a
Hmm.
small firm, say, sitting in Hyderabad, right?
Hmm.
How do I access a candidate who is probably graduating from Delhi, who will eventually settle in Hyderabad, but I don't know, neither does that candidate know that I exist. And I am a small firm, I cannot go and have placements in that college in Delhi, right?
But why not colleges
Yeah,
from
for sure,
Hyderabad?
colleges in Hyderabad, but why not colleges from Delhi or Bangalore or Mumbai?
As a
No,
starting
I'm
point.
saying what I'm trying to say is that
Huh.
does it have to be physical placements? I think it needs to be, we need to look,
Hmm.
and that is
I
what
mean, it
Connect
could
was
be
trying to
online
do.
also.
That was what Connected was trying to do,
Hmm.
is to make people available, employees available, employ jobs available wherever they were across the world, because you were from DIT, right? And you are now in Delhi, Bangalore.
Bangalore.
You're in Bangalore. So when you graduated, I don't know if you belong to Dehradun, but you were studying in
No.
Dehradun. You come out. What
Yes.
kind of a, where will your, would you like to work in Dehradun? You may not have wanted to work in Dehradun. So is there a
Hmm.
point in the college having Dehradun based placements in their college when 30% or 40% or 50 or sometimes even 90% of their students are from outside? That's the point I'm trying to make.
Hmm.
So it's a very complex problem to say they do. In Mumbai, there are colleges. I know JJ has a day where all the student
Hmm.
work is put out, architects are invited. A bunch of them
Yeah.
come, not
Yeah.
all of them, but many of them come and they go review. Largely, they would be alumni of JJ who would come to review it, and others who seriously want candidates and pick people up.
Hmm.
So there are colleges who make an effort to do it, but it's far
Hmm.
and few between. The IITs have placements, but I think those placements are probably the reason why many people choose to move out of architecture, because they are not architectural placements. There are just very few architectural firms that
Hmm.
go across India for placements. I know
Hmm.
Total Environment.
I understand. I understand the point that you're trying to make. Firms are smaller; they don't have the resources. Okay, and the industry is so fragmented that ha- placements do work in
Right,
bulk.
right.
They
So
do
it's
work in
also the
masses.
question of the
But the
economics of the whole thing.
I understand that most of the architecture colleges are actually only in handful cities. I think the largest number of colleges are in and near Mumbai. Then I think it's Bangalore. Bangalore has almost 27 plus colleges. Then it's Chennai, Pune, and then comes Delhi. If I only talk about these large cities, at least here, colleges could
So
do an
again,
effort.
I
And there are so many. huge firms
True.
also, no?
So I don't know if the huge firms are the response. That's another point. I think we need to
Okay.
build the smaller firms also. I think, okay, there are two things that we'll talk about here. One is maybe in these cities, the colleges need to collaborate, come together and have one placement. People may be willing to do it because it means them
Yes.
firms coming from, say,
I think firms would really love it
and
because they are
they're doing it
also
right.
having
They're
this
coming
issue.
here and they're looking at
Yeah.
all that is
Yes.
available for picking up. So I
Hmm.
wanted to do a real live on stage interview. I wanted to do this whole thing like a mela, and then I still might. But the reason I'm saying it's complex is one is this. Two is I think on the one hand, if all firms were corporatized, things may have been different. But all firms are not. More than
Hmm.
even by definition of how firms are expected to work by Council of Architecture, they're meant to be proprietorships, right? So as
Hmm.
proprietorships, most of the firms, many firms work, by the way, the young firms work by hiring interns. So they can work for 6 months and then project's over. You don't need to keep them going and so
Yeah.
on, right? So I think
Yeah.
while I may be digressing from the problem, I think it's important for us to focus on these smaller firms as well because the volumes, while
Hmm.
the larger firms, one firm might need 30 people, but there are only 5 firms like that need 30. But there could be
Yeah.
500 firms.
No, just to solve this problem of cold
So I
start.
think again back to the
Yeah, once it
alumni.
becomes yeah.
Alumni, I think nurturing that, the colleges need to nurture that. They could be your
Uh,
pipeline. They could be your pipeline, at least at first year, after which that could be a ladder to go somewhere else. But
hmm.
I think colleges need to look into this. There have been colleges who've approached us and said, will you be our placement center? I said, there's nothing I can do by being one college's placement center. There are only 30, 40 students that you have on offer, of which only 2 of them may be of interest to A, B, C, D, E firm, right? So it's, unless there is again a collaborative effort where there is volumes in the candidates as well as volumes in the hirers, the employers, and variety of jobs
Hmm.
is when this will work. So I seriously think it needs a different kind of anchoring. Yes, it needs to be city wise. If you're doing it live, do it city wise and do one
Hmm.
event a year in every city, which is a placement event, is how it will probably
Hmm.
go through, is my view. Having a placement in every college is a bad idea, especially in architecture.
Yeah. Economics wise,
Having a
it won't
placement
work.
cell
Yes.
is essential. But having a
Hmm.
placement initiative where you're inviting people to come for it is not going to work. They've tried it. It's not working. You can't blame the colleges. But I think they need to look at things a
Okay.
little differently. Many colleges have spoken about it. CEPT is struggling and they have placements. But
Can you elaborate on that?
I know they have a placement cell, but they're struggling, meaning
Hmm.
every one of their architects needs to be placed wherever they want to go,
Hmm.
right? They're all not from CEPT. They will get their jobs because, but I'm saying as the placement cell inviting people and the jobs meeting the requirement happening at CEPT is not something that works. The placement cell is
Hmm.
working, but not as a, what do you call, a placement event. That's the difference.
Hmm.
While in
Got that. I
all
think.
the engineering streams, management streams,
Hmm.
it's that 3 days of interviews that everybody gets picked.
Huh.
That's not how it's ever going to work in architecture.
In architecture, yes. That I
It'll
agree. Yeah.
probably happen when all these problems that we are talking about, the need for amendment of the act, need for, I think it all boils down to the dignity, pers- the perceived dignity of an architect in society.
Okay. You will have to elaborate on this
It's
now.
just that if you were to ask anybody, what would you like to be, any child, very few would say, I want to be an architect, right? There is,
They don't even
exactly. So
know
that's
who
what I
an
mean by the
architect is.
perceived dignity. So there is no, firstly, there is no awareness. And even if there is awareness, architect है, but I want to be either a lawyer or politician. वो भी बोल देंगे, but they never say, very few say, I want to be an architect. And that's because we haven't done our job. That whole thing of coming together, showing the body of work. We are still talking about those 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 architects. We are not
Yeah.
talking about the thousands that are actually doing some very meaningful work across the country. We need to
Right.
build that body of work. We need to celebrate that body of work. We need to say, this is the evidence of good work happening. This is the change that architects are contributing to for the nation. They are an essential cog in the wheel. We need, look at the Padma Awards. There is no category called architect. It's others. You have artist, you have journalist, you have social worker, you have XYZ, you don't have architect. I just realized this
Yeah.
time when Mr. Sompura was awarded the prize, the Padma Award for architecture. Right? It was under others architect. So it's only when we reach that level where architects are being given that, architecture is being given prominence, not architect. When we are given that level of prominence, that this whole thing of the act needing to be changed, the importance of an architect in the entire scheme of things as far as nation building, people feeling strongly that there is this contribution that the architect is making. I need to hire one. I don't mind. I'm not going to bargain. I'm not going to. The architect will get what he or she deserves, and hence they'll be able to pay better. Then once that happens, you're talking about a structure where maybe they'll be able to travel to recruit.
I
And when
understand.
you
Yeah.
talk of placements,
It's
let me also remind you that even in the other streams, the placements, the 100% placements, the placements that can be talked about happen only in a bunch of colleges. All law colleges, all engineering colleges they may have placement interviews, but not everybody gets picked up. It is an
yeah.
extremely sorry
But
state of affairs in many cases, right? Yeah.
yes, yes. Yeah. I understand that the reason that I chose this topic of discussion is that how do we encourage more people to stay in
Right.
architecture? Like, because there are so many drop-offs, and this is one of the biggest
So
reasons
how do you
behind it.
increase that first pay that people get? So I'm talking
Yeah.
about, while I know that, again, I mentioned the other streams, I know that not every graduating engineer gets a hefty pay packet. There are engineers who get that same 20,000 rupees or even lower.
But they at least get placed.
No,
So
not
at least,
necessarily.
uh,
Not all of them get placed.
okay.
I'm saying there is this problem, but a good fraction of them get good jobs and get good pay packets. In architecture, so-called pedigree colleges le lo, good top of the gold medalist student le lo, they will still get a starting of not more than 30K. I've not heard of that.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that is the disparity, right? It's not as if every one of us is, every one engineer is getting that 1 lakh and the difference is like that. It's not true. But the disparity is that the best of the best and the so-called, again, I would like to say inverted commas, best of the best here and best of the best there, in terms of pay packets, there is a huge difference.
Disparate. Yeah.
Seeing that is what people want to, people are worried about practicing or staying in the field of architecture. They realize only after they come in, after 2 years, that, hey, this is the scene. People maybe they wouldn't have joined if they had known better, right? Uh, the scene is that we need to see how that can be enhanced, for which, unfortunately, people like you and I would not have too much to do. We are only one of the many contributors. I think that's why I said it's important for us to collaborate, come together, celebrate the smaller firms. I think talk to people outside architecture, outside design, celebrate the cause of design, show how design is actually capable of. This is something, again, I'm getting into Ethos Foundation, where I've been talking about roti, kapda, or makan. Makan is a key part of survival, right? When the slogan was made. And it's not even a right. Design is not even a right. Not everybody is getting access to design. Not everyone knows the meaning of design. I think we are at huge fault. I've been talking about this in various places. We have a vertical called Shrama, which is dedicated to
Hmm.
construction workers. Construction workers don't
Yes.
know of the existence of an architect. What more irony can there
Yeah.
be?
They only know about
An engineer,
contractor,
Rajmistri, contractor, engineer.
engineer.
If they don't know, they are the ones who can be
Hmm.
our ambassadors in society. They are the ones who can go and speak in their villages के architect भी है. They are the ones who can say कि हमारे architect ने ये घर डिजाइन करके बताया है कि कैसे करना है. उनसे हमने सीखा है. If they don't know, where are
Hmm.
common people going to know? And if people don't know the value an architect and a designer could add to social growth, nation building, etc., you are not
Hmm.
going to have them seeking you out. The firms that are struggling will continue to struggle because many people are designing without architects. 80% of the buildings are getting.
Yeah.
So your number of architects being needed in society is will grow only when there is a demand for it, right? And the demand
Hmm.
will be
Demand accessibility, and people need to understand
the value of it.
the
So once they
value.
understand the value,
Yes.
there will be demand. If there is demand,
Huh.
architects will stay on the field,
They
they
will.
will be accessible, right? So how
Yeah.
do you create that? And I think here maybe the senior architects also have a role to play in one, being large hearted and allowing
Hmm.
the younger firms to grow. Two, in taking the word to communities. Right now it's just the builder architect kind of a connection that happens. I think when you start, in fact, in many countries, you have citizens forums, you have citizens juries of buildings, you have open houses before a building is built, right?
Hmm.
Then
Hmm.
the architect is presenting to an audience and saying, hey, this is the building I'm building for you, right? If a
Hmm.
mall is coming up, you're in Bangalore, say in Koramangala, and people in Koramangala are invited to say, this is what the design is going to look like. These are the problems it's going to solve. These are the problems. They'll come and say, these are problems it'll create. Can you do this differently? There's dialogue. They know who an architect is. When that mall comes up, they say, hey, I remember I gave this suggestion or I was involved in this discussion and this building came up. Maybe that's a way of building public, not opinion, but public awareness on architecture, on architect, on design.
Yeah. I remember at SCA, my friends which were pursuing UD, urban design, they had these open forums where they went and talked to the villagers that, see, this is what we are designing for you. And the
I
common
think it's
public.
extremely important to speak to villagers and communities, but it's
Yeah.
equally important to, because here we are talking economics, we are talking placements, we are talking salaries. I think we need to talk also to people who have the money to pay architects but don't use architects. Also, we need
Hmm.
to talk to them as well. Say through that, through those engagements, talk about how you have long term life cycle cost bolo, long term maintenance bolo, space
Hmm.
utilization bolo, health bolo. How have you impacted by being the designer? How have you made that
Hmm.
difference? If you're able to demonstrate through actual work, I think there will
Hmm.
be more people saying we have to use an architect and we should be willing to pay. So it's not going to be resolved in a day. It needs a lot more will.
Yes.
And this is something an architect can ask for. Say that let's have an open forum. Let me
Hmm.
present to the community. And I've known architects who've done it. I know an architect in Kerala who presented his design for his church to the entire community who would attend the church. And not just once,
Hmm.
at different stages to say, okay, this is the change design, this is where it is now, this is how much it's come to until its completion. And I think
Hmm.
if there was another project to be done, I'm sure that architect may have been called, right? Because you've been accessible. You're talking about access. And then
Yeah.
there will be a willingness
Yeah.
to pay. So I think each of us have a role to play in this. It's not just Saumya or XYZ who can make that difference. I think every
Hmm.
architect here, or even those that have left the field, are leaving the field, can do something towards making this. It's an
Hmm.
ideal situation that what we're talking about.
So you were saying one of a reason of students dropping out architecture and being disenchanted is also low salaries, right? And what I think about the problem of being low salaries is architects charging less. One reason is architects charging less. Other reason is the same we discussed. So how do we bring business elements into architectural practices is what I want to talk to you about
I'll
now.
add another reason for low salaries as well. Yes,
Mhm.
I think this whole way many architectural firms are run is not very different from maybe the a corner restaurant or a small shop that is run, or you are the boss and you have 10 subordinates to order around, or 4 subordinates to order around. So
Oh,
you're running a
okay.
restaurant and then there are
Huh.
the people, actually the waiters, or I'm talking about the small restaurants that are being run. Yeah, setups that
Setup.
are being.
Huh.
It's more like that, where the employee architects are almost considered as menial cheap labor. And
Huh.
because you've reached a certain level and you just want, unfortunately, that's the reality. And also, it's also to do with the structure, because it's a proprietorship. There are fewer norms and laws that you need to adhere to in terms of hiring. And I think that needs to change as well as we go along. But it's also this mindset that it's my practice. No, it's
Hmm.
not never our practice. Very rarely. There are firms with just 8 people who run it beautifully as our practice. I'm not generalizing, but generally speaking, many firms are run with 2 draftsmen, maybe 1 or 2 of those young architects, and 1 senior architect who's running around trying to get projects and then giving these people the project to run. And it's always, and hence there is this attrition also. There is never this feeling of, I belong to this place. I'm considered one of the organization. I'm part of the organization. I want to be here for long. So it becomes a mutual thing that this person who's in always wants to, it doesn't consider it his or her own. And the architect also doesn't consider the employees as really integral part of the organization. It's never us, it is my practice.
Yes,
And
yes.
I think that's
And there is the ownership.
ownership. So and I know that if this
Hmm.
person leaves, there's another person available, and I can manage with another person. So I cannot. So one is that the architect is receiving lesser amount for the job, and hence you were talking about, I'm getting only 10 to 12 drawings. Why should I pay more? That same attitude percolates from the architect to the
Huh.
employee
To the
architect, saying that
hmm.
I'm getting only 8 hours worth of time, and I'm actually teaching this kid who doesn't know enough. So
Yes. I have I have heard stories around architects asking interns to pay. I have heard
yeah,
stories like
there
that.
are.
And this also translates to clients. Sometimes clients also ask architect to pay them because it was their first project and what if they mess up?
Okay. No, I think even colleges, I think there's some change that is required in the entire structure. I've spoken to colleges also during the internship period who continue to charge the fee. And this has also been open for debates that have been. So I
Ah,
said, if you could
yes,
not charge the
yes.
fee in that period, and that becomes the student's internship stipend or whatever, then it's fair for the architect saying, I'm teaching you, I will give you a curriculum. This is what you will learn. It can be a
Hmm,
very firm curriculum that this is at the end of it. These are the things you will learn. It will be a module. So it's like a learning
hmm.
module. But I have conversely, I've been asked to empathize with the college's problem also, because they are continuing to pay for all the faculty who are there on board. All the infrastructure. It's
Yeah.
not as if they're going to say, okay, library will be shut for the 4th years because the library 4th years are not there. वो तो नहीं होता ना. All the facilities that they are using are continuing to be run. So they can't really not charge for that semester, is the response I've got. So I think again, it's the mathematics or the economics of it that needs to be worked out for me.
But Geeta, if the colleges are charging students the entire semester fee, isn't it their job to get them internships?
Um,
or at least
For
direct them
sure.
in the
For
right
sure. Direct
direction.
them in the right direction. I told you, help them build those portfolios from the beginning, not bring it to
Yeah,
the end. Give them advice on what looks good on a portfolio. One size fits all portfolio doesn't work. Every architect's office
it
cannot get
doesn't
the
work.
same
Yeah.
portfolio.
And every child's aspirations
Different.
are
Every
different.
architect employer also needs to see a different version of you. What you apply to an ethos may
Hmm.
not be what you would apply to an inside. There would be different things that I would want
Hmm.
to see of you. So how do you curate your portfolios to
Yes.
different people? There are people who come and directly ask me, ma'am, mere ko kaam dila do. So I say, it's you. You have to decide what kind of work you want to do. Where do you want to learn? How do you
Yeah.
want to learn? What is missing in your skill set? So, yes, it is their responsibility to at least give directions. There are some colleges who do it, some don't, many don't. You talked about the business of architecture. It is a little
Hmm.
different. I think there are courses that we've conducted on how to build a practice. So, if you're starting a practice, we've had senior architects, young architects, we've had lawyers, we've had accounts persons come and talk about what a practice is, how do you set it up, what are the problems you could face, how you come over those problems. We've done things like that for setting up a practice. Now,
Hmm.
for young,
Running
that's
a
for
practice.
running a practice and setting up. But when you graduate, you don't
Hmm.
directly jump into setting up a practice, right? You do work. And I think this whole
Hmm.
thing of salaries being right and all, I think again, there could be. So you asked me about Connected, and we didn't talk about the problems I
Hmm.
faced with Connected.
Yeah. I was waiting
Yeah.
to
So the
come to that.
problems that link up to this question also.
Uh,
We found it very hard to. So we did a compensation benchmarking. There were some firms who asked us for it to understand for a particular experience level, what do firms in, say, Calcutta or Delhi or Mumbai or Chennai pay? So they could rationalize their payment according to that, right? So everybody is paying a similar starting salary for first years, for second years, with 2 years experience for interns. They have some kind of a rationale. And that helped us understand what these scales are at different places. Otherwise,
hmm.
it for us also it felt a little inhuman in some cases where we were helping out with the matching of employer to employee, where the salary was something that's not respectable. So I think it's important for more surveys to be conducted in this space. Again, because they are proprietorships, it's hard for such information
Hmm.
to be out in the open,
Uh,
right? You don't. There are
yeah.
so many cases where there are no salary slips given. There's no record.
People are employed. People are employed not even as employees, but as
Correct.
consultants. So that the benefits are not
Accrued. No, but
given.
that's also because the employees ask for it. They want to be consultants for various reasons. They want to be able to do other things.
Not
Okay.
everywhere, Geeta.
It's more to get over this. Okay.
Yeah.
So, anyways, coming back to the problem of, so I'm saying that we need to build a body of evidence on what are the best practices in the industry. And I think
Hmm.
highlight them, talk about them, give awards to such practices. Then there will be, it'll be
Hmm.
aspirational for others to follow suit maybe. And even look at the ratio of the number of architects to the way they deal with their, not ratio, but compare how big the firm is vis-a-vis how their employees are being treated or how the compensation is
Hmm.
happening. And you might see a pattern. You might see a pattern that is different for different cities, different for different states, again, for reasons of, you can say, cost of living, but also for reasons of where the bigger corporatized kind of firms are. The patterns will emerge. Someone has to do that complete research, I think, and maybe it's an idea for the Council of Architecture to take up also, to identify what are these patterns, and then arriving at I don't know how you can stipulate that this is a basic minimum. It's hard to stipulate because it's legally not probably possible to stipulate. But when you talked about business of architecture, maybe again within colleges, there is an understanding of sorts that when we graduate, this is a minimum that we will not go below. Is an
Uh,
unsaid agreement between the students. who are graduating. That is
Hmm.
instilled by it's also very hard to, someone will not even tell you and accept something and go away because they're not going to get, so it's very hard to implement. But those are,
Hmm.
maybe ways in which you can somehow streamline this. There is no one way that you can say this is going to change in the near future so soon, unless the act
Hmm.
undergoes some change, revision, and then there can be stipulations that this is what it's going to be about. So one, again, people start sticking together, even amongst the student community. Maybe things will change. It's very interesting. We've received a proposal from somebody for funding as an idea on exactly this, on calling out unethical practices. And I don't know how we'll be able to support something like that because it's being funded by somebody and then you're going to call out people in the open. So but there are people who are thinking about this very seriously. And I think that's one way of doing it, is you're being activists and you're
Hmm.
supporting people. But like I said, there are people who, even today, I have a form which I ask people to fill in their salary expectations. You're surprised at the range that I get. For that same first year, there are people who will quote 1 year out of college or just out of college. There are people who will quote a
Hmm.
12,000 to there are people who will quote a 50,000. So it's also an understanding of your self worth. So it's not so
Yes.
much the
Yeah.
business as you're an employee. Business is for when you're starting practice. And that is something that
Yes.
probably needs to be instilled as I think you should have, beyond college, you should have some bridge courses. 1 year out of college, 2 years out of college, the college is holding a program for a month or for 6 weeks, or it
Hmm.
can be an online thing that you could come back and learn from if you want to. Is something that could be done for
Hmm.
this. But here you're talking about employability, you're talking about demanding a basic dignity for the value of work that you're putting in.
Yeah.
Even if you might say that you're not ready, you're absolutely incompetent, quote unquote, to be in an architect's
Hmm.
office. Um,
Hmm.
Unskilled, again, I don't like using the word unskilled, but a laborer, construction workers, daily wage is about 300, 400 rupees a day. Into 30 days is about 12,000 rupees if he or she works every day, right? So you
Yeah.
can't put your, and one of the reasons, you asked me about why I was disenchanted about working in an architect's office. I was being paid 750 rupees at a time that my father was paying our driver 900 rupees. And there
Hmm.
was another firm that was offering me 500. Okay. And I said, where is the justice? And it was
What is happening?
not
Yeah.
that I
Right.
wanted, I didn't, fortunately,
It was not about
money
the
so
money,
much.
I
But it was
understand.
about the logic of
Yeah.
this whole thing. I said, where is the sense in all? And I said, one is, of course, worked at 750 for a few months. And then I saw there was no satisfaction in what I was doing as well. It was a kind of a mill firm. And then I said, now it's time to look at life differently. But not everybody can do that, afford to do that. I've had people telling me that you had the luxury to live a life that you
Hmm.
led. And I agree. I had the luxury to make my
Hmm.
choices.
Yeah.
I could have
Yeah.
chosen to, of course, I could have made different choices. So I did make the choices that I made with great, what do you call, consideration. And I'm glad I did. But
Hmm.
not everybody has the luxury because parents have spent 5 years of their hard earned money and they want to see returns. They want to be able to see the
Yeah.
person standing on their own feet.
And the problem is that even with passing years, the salary doesn't
Yeah,
increase
it
that
doesn't.
much. Once you have a family, once you get settled down, it's really difficult to actually make those expenses
Right?
work because you start at 30,000. How
You
much
don't
can you
start at
do? I
30,000.
mean,
Very few start at 30,000.
yeah, exactly. Even that's what I said. Even if you do that, you will reach 1 lakh, 2 lakh. But in a city like Bangalore, that is actually
Yeah, yeah.
peanuts. It's not a comfortable lifestyle. And that's why
To
people
move out,
choose to do their
not
own
just that,
practice.
even if you ask me why they leave, earning a
Uh,
20,000, 25,000 is not a big deal today, right?
it's
They can
not.
easily
Yes.
find
Yeah.
an alternate avenue where their father says, come and join me, I'll give you that money.
Yeah.
Join my
Yeah.
business, you've got a degree, let it be, and you join me.
And with this content creation and everything, which is
Yeah. And you've
Like,
learned the
you
skill.
can easily make 25K
And you've learned
anyhow.
that skill of creating content, graphic. You
Huh.
put it to use in different ways. You become a infographics person. You become a UI UX part of a team,
Mm.
website designer. You choose one of those alternatives and you move on. There are people who've become
Mm.
chefs that I know who moved on to become because. So yeah, there are people who move on because this is so. Whenever someone asks me from school, their parents talk to me or kids talk to me saying, "Should I join architecture?" I say,
Mm.
do you have the stomach and the passion for it? Do you have the patience for it? Because you need to be really patient and stick it out. And
Yeah.
even the brightest have left. There were people I knew who were
Mm.
topping the charts in IIT Kharagpur but joined Amazon or Google and went on, right?
Yeah. Someday you will have to look at your balance sheet
Absolutely.
also, no? How much money
I
do I
think
have in my bank
we've
account?
spoken for so long on this, but we do not have a solution really to say that this is because there
Yeah.
is no easy way out of this. It's even the firms that are I'm saying even the firms that are doing the biggest projects in our country do not pay more than that 30,000 for the starting. It's only those that have been there for 10 years, 12 years, 15 years who
Mm.
become they're very dependable. They are a little indispensable. They are the ones who go into the lakhs. Even when I was when we were working with Connected, there were people who needed 7 years graduate. Some firms were paying 40, 60 to the 7 years graduate, but some were paying 1 lakh, 1.2 lakhs. So
Mm.
one saw
Mm.
even at that level, the
Yeah.
variation. Yeah.
The difference.
Experience would need to be experience in the space. It's not
Mm.
that you're 7 years out of college and you say, I have the experience, but you need to have it in
Uh,
the relevant element.
so before I call the session off, do you have any advice for the younger generation? Just
Yeah,
one thing.
I think I've said a lot on what they need to do, like start focusing on things, but have fun, enjoy the journey is something that I would say. It is serious. At the end of the day, it is about earning your bread. It is about your life. Uh, uh, uh,
Hmm.
so I find either in college, either the extremely serious types or the extremely fun-loving types, that balance is certainly required in life to take you forward. And it's something that I did in every year of my college life. I worked with different architects, explore. So, in your first year, go and work with somebody. On second year, work with somebody altogether different. There are so many people and so many different kinds of opportunities you have today. Go out there and try your hands at different things, dirty your hands, be there. Uh, uh, Simple thing that happened recently. We're doing a lot of fellowships where students are our vehicle for change, is how I see it. And students are being sent
Hmm.
out to interview construction workers. And I was in Pune recently, and the Brick College and also the MMCA college students came for this workshop where we were running a workshop on financial literacy for construction workers. And they came in as volunteers to help with the program. And they said it was such a life transforming experience for them to just be at that construction site, not at the construction site where the workshop was happening, but where they did the interview, where they went on their own. They identified the construction worker, began a conversation with him or
Hmm.
her, spent 45 minutes learning about their life. And they said, you don't think that you don't know, of course,
Hmm.
that there are construction workers, but you don't think about their lives. You don't think about everything that, and I think here I might be sounding a little prudish, but I think for us to understand that we have a responsibility to society, to community is something that will be nice for
Yeah.
it to be
Yeah.
ingrained in the way you do things. And yeah, I know it's a tough world. You just have to hang in there. That's all I'd say. Especially in architecture, it's a tough world. We've been talking about all the problems that are there. And I don't think we've arrived at too many solutions. But I think talking to
Hmm.
you, Soumya, has crystallized some thoughts in my mind on some directions that I could take on some things. And hopefully we'll see some of that happening soon. Because it's something that I think
That's
talking also is like thinking aloud, fleshing out some things
yes.
that come your way. And that's something that's happened during this conversation. And I thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for first of all joining in Geeta, giving the time for this. I enjoyed the conversation a lot and I have learned a lot. I have actually made a lot of notes from our conversation today. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
God bless.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you found Converse valuable, you can subscribe to the podcast on YouTube and Spotify. You can find all past episodes and know more about us on Insyd.ai. See you in the next episode.